Drive Me at Midnight, a story by Eby's Heart. It was Ben's first day at work as a driver to one of the richest families in his city, the Akita family. He could not believe he was picked amongst 500 candidates that were shortlisted for interview. All the applicants that came for the interview even had to create a WhatsApp group to know who will be chosen for the highest-paying chauffeur job they have ever seen. So I will be working for a former senator and earning $1 million a month just to drive one spoilt brat around town at night? Ben thought and immediately exited the WhatsApp group. They all tried to call him when they saw the amount Ben posted on the group that he will be paid, but he blocked them one by one. I don't need poor people like you guys around me anymore, Ben said as he deleted all their numbers one by one. He was told to resume by 7 p.m. daily. When he got to Akita's family mansion, Ben proudly walked into their home and was welcomed by an old man dressed in a suit. Within some minutes, Ben was served the best meal of his life. He was just smiling while he ate to his fill. He thought of how he had spent his last 1K a few hours ago and how he was suddenly where he will be made a millionaire in a few weeks, and smiled. "He is ready," the man who was dressed in a suit said with his head bowed. "Bring him here," Madame Dora said without turning to look at the old man. The old man walked downstairs slowly until he got to where Ben was sitting and smiling with a toothpick in his mouth. "Follow me," the man said without waiting for Ben to hear him well. Ben jumped from the comfortable couch he was sitting on and followed the man. "Sit," Madame Dora said to Ben once he stepped into the room that was painted red. "You will drive my son from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. You are to drive him to anywhere he wants to go to. But before you begin tonight, here are the do's and don'ts of this job." Ben smiled while thinking, what could be hard in just driving your brat of a son? He was still thinking and smiling when he heard, "Take this cup and drink what is inside it," Madame Dora said while stretching her hands forward with a cup in her hand. Ben looked at her in shock, trying to understand what was going on. But the thought of earning $1 million made it easier for him to decide. Poverty or enjoyment, Ben thought and quickly took the cup from her. He drank the content, which was strangely sweet. "Now we can talk," Madame Dora turned and looked Ben straight in the eyes and said, "You just took an oath to keep everything you will be told here or see while working for us a secret. If you ever open your mouth to talk, whatever you see, you take," Madame Dora said in a stern voice. "Will I be paid at the end of the month?" Ben asked, still wondering what his business with secrets was. Madame Dora ignored him and continued, "Whenever my son enters the car, do not look back or talk to him until you bring him home. Don't ever try to see him in the mirror," Madame Dora said in a loud voice. "Take this," Madame Dora said while handing over a cloth sealed in a neat nylon. "You must wear this anytime you want to drive my son. Lastly, whenever you get back, meet Mr. Boku, the old man you saw earlier. He will give you something to drink. Don't ever leave without drinking what Boku will give you." Madame Dora finished talking and waved her hand for Ben to leave. And for the first time, Ben got a little scared and started thinking of leaving the work. But before he got downstairs, an alert entered his phone. 500K? He jumped in joy. "This is a welcome package. Your salary will still be paid at the end of the month," the message read. Ben could not stay still. He had never had more than 10K in his account for more than a day. "How is this real?" he thought and danced again. Boku led him to a room where he would stay and wait until it was 12 a.m. Jerry, Madame's son, doesn't like waiting, so you will be in the car, seated by 11:30 p.m., Boku said and walked out. Ben put an alarm on his phone while he laid his head on the bed. At 11 p.m., Ben got up and wore his uniform. He quickly removed it as the uniform was burning his skin. "What is this?" he asked himself while he removed it and threw it on the floor. He wanted to open the door and come out but noticed that the door was locked. He wasn't told that the door would only be open when it was 11 p.m. "Oh my God," he started panicking. "How am I going to wear a cloth that is this hot?" He rushed into the toilet and soaked it in water. "I will rather wear a wet cloth than a hot one," he said while soaking the cloth into a bucket full of water. But once he brought the cloth out, The water dried up and the cloth became instantly hot again. "I can't do this job. What is happening to me?" he said and started sweating. He glanced at the watch and it was 11:25 p.m. "I will manage just for this night so that they won't take this 500k away. But after this night, I am done," Ben said while he bravely put the cloth on. He managed to come out while sweating profusely. He sat inside the car as he felt his skin burning. Once it was 12 a.m., he felt the car sinking heavily as if someone with too much weight just sat down. "Drive," a voice said in a hoarse tone. But Ben forgot all the lectures he was given a while ago about not turning to look and turned. He saw something he had never seen before and screamed. Ben saw something that looked like a man but without a head. He passed out and woke in a very dark place. He wanted to sit up but noticed that he was on the floor. "Where am I?" Ben cried as he felt a long lash of whip across his face. "Sit," a deep voice ordered him. He tried to open his eyes, but another whip landed heavily on his head. He fell back and started crying. "Help me, please. What is happening?" It was after the third whip that he remembered what happened earlier. What he saw when he turned in the car flashed back in his memory and he started weeping and screaming. After a while, Ben felt something hit him and he fell. But he somehow didn't pass out as expected. Then a voice said, "I thought we will get it right this time, but this one was a bigger failure." Ben recognized the voice to be Madame Dora's voice. What are they talking about? He thought deeply. Then another terrifying familiar voice said, "I am running out of patience. How many more men should we employ and cage before I can return to being myself?" That is the voice of the monster. Ben remembered the voice he heard that threw him into a state of unconsciousness and started whimpering. But he had to control himself in order to know what was really going on. "We need just one man to be able to drive you around for just 7 days and you can then return fully to the land of the living," Madame Dora said in a very low tone, as if she was trying not to anger the monster who seemed to be breathing heavily. "We will organize another interview immediately. This time, we will go deep into the trenches. I am sure we will find men who are more courageous in such places," Madame Dora said and started walking away. She got to a place and stopped while lifting her hands up. Ben raised his head a little to see what she was doing. She put the light on and everywhere became very bright. "We now have too many men in here. The substance they took during oath has made it impossible for them to die easily, even after being starved for months." Madame Dora was still talking when Ben managed to look up and saw many old men like Boku lying helplessly on the floor. He started crying and wondered what Madame Dora and her family were doing to people. Why are they keeping old men in prison? Ben thought as he shook in terror. He was still peeping when Madame Dora put off the light and pressed something in her hand. Part of the wall opened and she walked away. "So the wall is a door. How can I get out of here if there are no doors or windows?" Ben thought. But the more he tried to get up, the more he noticed that he had no strength at all. "What happened to me?" he cried. He managed to stagger and stood up, then walked to where the men were all lying down and asked in a husked voice, "What happened to all of you? How did you all get here?" They couldn't answer. They were too weak to talk. It was only one of them that managed to look up at Ben and said, "You look old just like us now. Look at your hands." Ben slowly looked at his hands and saw a shrunken, wrinkled skin staring at his face. He started touching his face while going backward and breathing fast. He felt his bony and wrinkled face and screamed while falling weakly on the floor. "If you don't want to be sent to hell this night, then you should shut up," one of the men said with all his energy. Meanwhile, about 400 men from the trenches were lined up at the gate, waiting for their turn to be called in for an interview. They were all in high spirit because this time around, Madame Dora decided to include the amount the person will be paid during the advert for the position of driving her dear son. She wanted it to be survival of the fittest. They got more than 3 times the applicants they used to get. On the queue was Abdul, a young hustler with a bright smile who believed strongly that he will get the job. Madame Dora sat back in her chair as she remembered the day her son turned into a monster. He was only 16 as at then and always angry. Madame Dora, who was a high-class businesswoman and a politician, had travelled out of the country for 2 months to attend business meetings. When she returned, she found every member of her household dead. Her husband, servants, and 2 daughters were all dead. She cried and searched for her son and found him without a head inside his room, while his best friend was dead on the floor too. She was about to run outside with his driver, who drove her home then, and the 2 security men with her when her son called her name. How? She wondered. Her son then told her how he was practicing dark magic he had seen online with his best friend. They had seen where a man was interacting with some odd spirits and tried to follow the step by step the man had shown them to do it. I killed everyone, Mom, his head said and laughed. The man who came out from the other side said I should do it. He said if I did it, I will become a very powerful man, her son Jerry said and laughed again. Madame Dora remembered trying to run out of the house with her driver and the 2 security men who had witnessed her headless son when her son ran ahead of them and turned the 3 men into very old men. Madame Dora decided to save her son. She first of all lied that someone attacked her family while she was away, except her only son who was in critical condition in an undisclosed hospital. After burying and mourning her family, she started consulting everything and everyone with a spiritual knowledge on how to save her son. It was during the consultation that she met Boku. Boku was a young man hustling to make ends meet in traffic. She stopped her car and offered Boku, who claimed he had no family to attract sympathy, an employment. When Boku came into her house, the man telling Madame Dora how to cure her son touched Boku on the head and turned him into an old weak man. He also erased his memory while saying, as long as he doesn't leave your property and no one ever recognized him to call his name, he will never remember his real name or how he got here, and he will serve you until you don't need him again. Boku, whose name was Musa, was called Boku from that day onwards. The man also told Madame Dora that her son can get himself back, but that she needed to get a young man who can be able to drive him around at midnight for 7 days straight. Your son needs to be driven to the beyond to get himself back. The man also laid down all the rules that Madame Dora had been giving to all those men she had been employing. Once this is done, your son will walk home himself, whole. The man had told her all these things more than a year ago. And since then, she had been employing young men almost every week, hoping to get what she wanted. To her, money could solve everything, so she kept throwing money at the men, hoping to get her heart desires. The man also conjured 2 men who looked abnormally huge to guard Madame Dora's gate, so that no one could ever run away. So even if anyone escaped, they could not pass through the gate where the 2 huge men were guarding. She bought a corpse that was almost her son's age and height, placed it in an intensive care unit of a reputable hospital, pretending her son was in the hospital. So all her friends and relatives visited the hospital to look at her son through a glass, as they were told no one could go into where he was. The hospital collected huge amounts from Madame Dora every day for that. After thinking and resolving this would be the last interview, even if she had to pay the driver 5 million to get it done, she stood up and walked out of her room and straight to where the young men waiting to be interviewed were. As she walked out, she remembered telling her friend she was only trying to train a driver that would drive her son when he leaves the hospital. She never told anyone she employed the men afterwards and that her underground was almost filling up with her failed experiment. Abdul was chosen after the interview. He was ecstatic when he got a message to resume work. But the first day he started, Boku served him as always and gave him all the instruction, which he accepted with a smile. But when Boku was leaving his presence, Abdul saw Boku's ear. It had the exact same cut his missing older brother had. Abdul didn't know when he blurted out Boku's real name. Musa. Musa, is that you? Once he called his name, Boku got himself and turned into his real self right there. He was just a 22-years-old young man. He looked at Abdul and said, "My brother." They both hugged each other in tears. Meanwhile, Madame Dora was calling Boku to come immediately. "What are you doing here, brother? We have searched everywhere for you," Abdul asked in tears. As Boku wanted to respond, He heard Madame Dora's footsteps coming down the stairs. I need to hide, she is coming. She must not see me, Boku said and hid inside the closet. Madame Dora walked up to the door while calling Boku's name. Madame Dora immediately sensed danger. Could he have gotten himself? She opened the room Abdul was given and said, "Where is the old man that opened here for you?" Abdul got up and bowed while saying, "He left here. I think he entered one of the rooms," Abdul lied. Madame Dora walked upstairs to look at the CCTV camera. She saw Boku enter the room Abdul was in and never came out. She alerted her 2 bodyguards and told them to hunt Boku down. "We need to leave here right now." "Madame Dora knows I am in here," Boku said and walked out of the room. He opened the front door, but a strong lash landed on his head and he staggered back. "Her guards are on the move. I think she has alerted them," Boku said. Throughout the time Boku was old and not aware of himself, he witnessed everything that was happening, but they felt like a dream to him then. He couldn't think well or tell the difference between reality and dream then, but now he remembers all he had dreamt of. She will soon release her son from the underground, and if her son comes out, we will both become old and shrunken like I was before. So we need to move fast. One of us must get out of this compound and call for help, Boku said to his brother in tears. "Go and get help," Abdul said in a shaky voice. "You know this compound more than I do. I may not find my way around, even if I escape. So go, let me distract Madame Dora." "You have no idea what you are saying. You cannot distract them. Her son is not even human," Boku said, looking terrified. Abdul became even more scared when he heard that. "Let me call my friends to come and get us," Abdul said and brought out his phone to make a call but found out his phone was out of service. "No signal at all," Abdul said, looking defeated. "Are you sure that she is not watching us?" Abdul asked, looking up. "She can't see us here. Look at the position of the camera. If you are sure she has not seen us, then I will pretend not to be aware or even know who you are and remain in my room. Since I am starting my work tonight, why not hide under the car that I will be using tonight? Maybe I will open the boot of the car for you to get inside it. Once we are in town, you can come out and I will continue driving her son. Then you can go and get help for us," Abdul suggested, looking relieved. "But how do I get past her abnormal guards? They may find me," Boku asked in fear. "They may be the ones who flogged me earlier. Madame Dora keeps the abnormal guards to deal with anyone who tries to escape. They can flog one into unconsciousness. I am sure they are waiting by the door right now," Boku said and tried to walk in front of the CCTV camera. "I will walk across the CCTV camera. I know she is still watching me. But when I am crossing, I will make sure not to show my face, and I will walk slowly and weakly like I used to walk. I will come from another room after locking the door of the room to make it look like I was still inside it, so that she won't suspect you." Boku crawled almost on the wall to avoid being caught by the camera. He then appeared before the camera and walked past to the other side of the living room. Madame Dora caught a glimpse of Boku and called his name. But Boku ran to the back door and tiptoed to the car that Abdul would be driving. He crawled under it and was waiting while sweating. He was praying that they should both make it out alive. Madame Dora knocked on the door several times but left after thinking Boku was resting, as this was not the first time Boku would just fall asleep and it would last for hours. She knew it was because of old age and weak bones. When it was 11:30 p.m., she told Abdul to get ready and wait in the car for her son. Abdul was happy that she didn't find out that Boku was not in the house. He wore the burning cloth that was burning his skin and walked outside to enter the car. When he got to the car, he slowly opened the boot of the car and Boku crawled in, panting. The 30 minutes Abdul waited in the car was the longest 30 minutes of his life. Once it was 12 a.m., Abdul heard, "Drive." He started the car without looking back and was shaking while he drove out. The gate was opened by the abnormal-looking guard, but as Abdul was driving out as fast as he could, he heard Madame Dora's voice shouting, "Close the gate. Stop the car. Boku is missing." Apparently, She called one of the guards to open the door and bring Boku out, as he was taking too long to open his door. "Stop!" one of the security men shouted for Abdul to stop, but he kept driving with speed. He managed to drive out of the compound, pressed open on the boot, and jumped out of the moving car. Madame Dora screamed as she watched the car run into the fence opposite them and the two men running away into the street. After them, she shouted. Her son, who was not even human, was already inside the house roaring in anger. Abdul and Musa managed to escape. They continued running until they got to a market. They hid under one of the tables in that market while they watched. After some minutes, they saw the two odd-looking men that were Madame Dora's guards walking about, still looking for them. Once it was morning, Musa and Abdul raised alarm and everyone in the market gathered. They told people how the popular former senator, Madame Dora, uses one of her houses around the area to perform some spiritual experiment. But to their shock, Madame Dora was already talking to the press about two men who burgled her house and tried to kill her. She told the public that the two men were likely the same people that killed her husband and daughters a year ago. She cried in front of the camera while telling the public to help her get justice by catching the two intruders. She even offered a tangible prize for anyone that can find them. Within a few minutes, all the blogs, TV stations, and some influencers carried the news. Abdul and Musa noticed that something was odd when people surrounded them and were aiming to catch them. They were caught and handed over to the police. But the police were not taking them to the station, they were taking them to Madame Dora's home because she had paid heavily to have them back. So Abdul and Musa found themselves locked underground with the old men there. But because Abdul was in touch with the other men that attended the interview with him. In fact, he even promised to share his first salary with them. They were shocked to see his face online as the intruder the former senator was talking about. Some reached out to the police to explain that Madame Dora had employed Abdul a few days ago, but they were not listened to. They continued pressing harder until a certain activist took up the case, yet nothing happened. After trying everything possible, some of the guys sneaked into the compound and set the house on fire. Madame Dora screamed as she watched the house she was told would serve as a passage for her son to return, burn down. The fire also affected the walls underground and her prison opened. Abdul and Boku were only the fit prisoners that could run away. The rest of the men were sleeping and looking dead except Ben. He cried and begged them to carry him with them before the house, which was on fire, fell down. The fire service and the press were at the gate trying to save the house as Madame Dora cried as if that was the only house she had. Her friends, neighbors, and relatives who came to her rescue were surprised at her. "Why are you mourning this house this much? You have almost 100 of them all over the country, so please hold yourself," her only sister said with a frown. It was when they were putting the fire off that the men came out of the fire in front of everyone. The press were shocked to see Abdul and Boku, who were supposed to be in police custody, plus Ben. "There are many more men trapped inside the house. Go and help them," Ben managed to say. The fire service men ran into the mansion and to the underground, but it was too late as fire had entered the underground dungeon. The cries of the men filled the air. Some of them were rescued and taken to the hospital, while others died in the fire. Madame Dora was nowhere to be found by the time the men were brought out. She fled the country, saying that her life was in danger as some intruders were hiding inside her home. And as usual, the law was on her side. She was never arrested or prosecuted. She was only blacklisted from politics for some time. The men who were saved regained themselves and turned to their young selves. But the corpses of the ones that died were never found. When the job and the pay don't tally, think well before taking such a job. Do not let your quest to reap where you didn't sow blind you.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.